Hello, and welcome to Lead, Learn, Connect, where we explore the worlds of training, coaching, and powerful leadership. I'm your host, Alan Krieger, and on this show we talk about not just the how of helping others grow, but the behind-the-scenes work of overcoming challenges, staying connected to what's really important. Our guest today is Adrian Taylor. Adrian has been working in leadership and organizational development for over 20 years. He's also a certified coach and author of 2 books. He got his start in learning and development in the Air Force and has visited over 40 countries. Whether you're a new trainer, a seasoned facilitator, or just curious about what it really takes to thrive in this world, this episode is for you. Welcome, Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I am too. So you have a interesting journey. Lots of people have, no one I've talked to yet has gone to college to be in learning and development. So let's share your journey a little bit, how you got started and then where it's taken you to today.
Oh, wow. So I might be your first one, but in a roundabout way, right? So, yes. So I was one of those. I think this is a career that finds you and you don't necessarily find it. So in the Air Force, I actually went in as an avionic technician. So something totally different than learning and development. But what happened was I went through my training extremely fast. I got through it extremely fast. And I wanted to take my on the job training, I test to get certified, in electronic technician. And so they didn't want to let me because I still had over 6 months left before I had to take the test. And so they basically was like, no, you're not taking it. I'm like, I'm ready to take it. They're like, no, you're not taking it. I'm like, I'm ready to take it. My motivation to take it so early was because I wanted to, start taking classes. And I couldn't take classes until I finished. Eventually, they said, okay, you can take the test. Took the test, passed it with flying colors. And so they was like, whoa, how did you do that? How did you study this so fast? And I told him I created a plan. And he was like, you created a plan? And so I just started explaining to him what I did. And they, can you do that for other people? And I'm like, sure, I guess, I could just implement what I did and share that. And so there's like, we want you to do that. And so I ended up doing that and created a plan. And basically, because I had 9-10 months that I was trying to get done with it, it was like, that's a little bit overzealous, especially when we have 18 months to do this. So how about if we set up a plan that's about 14 to 15 months, meet in the middle? I'm like, sounds great. And so I did it. Still didn't know exactly what I was doing, didn't really understand the terminology of what I was creating, but I did it, ended up winning awards. And soon they was like, yeah, we need you to do something else. And so they told me, they was like, we need you to go to the First Term Airman Center. First Term Airman Center, I was in the Air Force, is when people first come, right, to, they're first fresh out of basic training in tech school. And this is the first base that they're scheduled to be at. And so they would have to come through me. So it was kind of like an onboarding process. And so they wanted me to create an onboarding process 2 weeks long. So we're not talking about 1, 2, 3 days, 2 weeks long. And it needed to be robust and filled with things that airmen should know, coming into this newfound freedom and this newfound space. And so I met with the generals and talked through it. Leadership, they told me some of the things that they wanted. And I went into the lab and I started creating. And so just to give you some examples, some of the things I did, I was at Eglin Air Force Base. All the people that's been stationed there, shout out to you, was, I created a scavenger hunt because if people know and that have been to Eglin is extremely huge. It is the biggest base, land-wise in the world. And so you can literally be on a corner of Eglin Air Force Base and don't see the whole base. So I created a scavenger hunt around the base for people to find different things, artifacts, to get acclimated to the base, right? I did, financial literacy. Everybody knows that guys going into the military love Mustangs, Challengers, and Chargers, all these cars they cannot afford, right? So I made this robust program once again, ended up winning awards for it. And that really showed me what I needed to go to school for. I wanted to sharpen my skills. I wanted to understand what it was from, a technical standpoint of what I was doing and what I was creating. I had no clue what it was, previous, to that. I didn't know I was using the ADDIE model. I didn't know I was using, Kirkpatrick model. I didn't know I was using any of these things to build these things. And, but I went in school to learn it. So, like I said, it was kind of an opposite. I kind of was introduced to the world and then started getting educated in it. But yeah, I still went. And I just been working on my craft ever since, getting better, whether it's facilitating, whether it's, org development, whether it's, on the content development side, I just try to sharpen my tools, go to trainings, and just have that growth mindset of always getting better and better.
So what are some of the things that are different about you now as a trainer than you were back then when you were doing a great job but didn't have any framework for it?
So the difference is I'm scary because I have the framework now, right? Back then it was a lot of trial and error. Now it's I understand what I'm doing. I have the tools to be successful. There's not much trial and error, and I've got the experience, right? So when I sit down, there's certain questions that I know to ask sneezes of what they're to get out of this training, what they're looking for, right? Where that before it's like, I'm just asking you a question. Hey, what do you want out of this? And now I'm trying to figure it out, right? I don't know. I didn't dig deep enough. I didn't ask all the right questions. And so now it's me throwing darts, bringing it back, and you telling me that works or not, right? So now I don't have to play the guessing game because I have the tools and I know what I need to do to get to the information. Because one thing that you understand with sneezes is if they could do this, they would do it. And sometimes they think they can do it. And it's like, no, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to take what's in your precious little head and create something magnificent, right? That people can enjoy, have fun with, and take back and implement on a day-to-day, right? That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to be the subject matter expert. That's you. So you bring in your gifts and your talents, but I'm here to take what's in your head and structure it to a way that's digestible for everybody. And I understand that now.
Yeah. And I imagine most SMEs are grateful that they're not up on the stage, that you're going to be doing it. Yeah. But what if you found somebody who said, yeah, I really want to do this training. Why are you getting in between me and the people? How do you deal with that?
I asked them. I mean, because one, sometimes people can't make that transition, right? Some people can be subject matter experts and give the training and do it very well. So now that conversation kind of changes for me to understand, what they bring to the table when it comes to presenting this information, right? And if I can help them and give them some tools to make sure that they are able to present the information that's digestible. And so now we can practice that and we can do some role playing and talking through it. And I can help them with that process if that's something that they absolutely want to do. But once again, typically what I still find is that structuring piece. So even if someone can, give that training, typically it's hard for them to structure it. So I'm here to at least, I'm going to help them, do that. And if they can give the training, that's fine too. I can take a step back. I don't have to give the training. But they need to make sure that they're able to do it in a way that's digestible. Oh yeah, for sure.
When we talked before, you said that you've kind of developed some templates that you use to kind of guide this customization. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach it, or what framework you've got? Because an expert is giving you lots of information. How do you organize that and put it together to be part of your training program?
So it all really depends on the training that's being given, right? So some of the key, templates that I definitely use is, what is it, understanding and having those questions. Ultimately, what are we trying to get out of this training? That's going to always be one of the main. I mean, I don't care what you're giving, right? That's going to be a staple. This is the reason why you're giving it. Ultimately, what are we trying to get out of this training, right? So that's going to always be a question that we have. What is our time? What is our time constraints? What is our time allotted for this training, right? These are key foundational questions before we even get into the meats and potatoes of what we're doing, here. Understanding that, what is our target audience, right? Who is our target audience that we're training to or giving this training to? Because that's a big piece of it, right? Understanding because that's another thing that you really understand. Okay, are we talking to engineers? Are we talking to doctors? Right? Are we talking to medical techs? Hey, are we talking to welders? Are we talking to military? All of those you have to address in a different way. And I guess because I've worked with all of them, I realized that, like, you know, all of them have typical acronyms, right? But their acronyms are so different. And so understanding the jargon that they speak always helps. So these are some of the key things that I have, especially when it comes to questions. And so what I tend to do is if I have a leadership training, right, I may have a basic of, there's always keys to leadership. And so understanding your keys to leadership. So I have this training, but now I have key questions that I'm asking that now I can take that basic information and build out to make sure that now it fits my audience. Because the meat and potatoes, that's another thing you learn. The meat and potatoes doesn't really change. It's the tailoring to make it fit your audience. That's always the thing. So if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. That saying, so having some of those core, especially when it comes to these trainings that are always given and being ready to give it. And, now it's just sitting down with the SMEs, asking them those types of questions to now change it to fit, the audience.
Right. And we talked earlier about the team communication style assessment, and you scored high in the E, which is engaging, and it's a good one for trainers, facilitator, to keep people awake and engaged. But you talk about the different audiences you deal with. So a welder versus a doctor versus maybe a social worker, they all have different approaches. How do you factor that into your design if you're going to be talking to people that are, pretty very task oriented, want to get it done quick, but you got a lot of information you got to share? How do you balance that? Yeah, that's the T style, the really quick, fast, and you've got a complicated thing to present.
It really depends, definitely, on the time frame, right? So understanding, hey, this could be a two-hour course, right? Which is now I really consider a refresher. Anything under 4 hours is going to be a refresher in my eyes. So you're going to have to use the T style in that approach, because you can't just get stuck in trying to create all of these creative things. There's information that you got to get through and make sure that they understand and be able to touch and give them times to ask you questions, right? So using the T style, especially with that approach, quicker trainings, and those usually are training compliance trainings typically that you find they need to take those trainings to check the box.
Yeah.
Right. And so the only thing I can do, especially when it comes to those, is try to make them engaging in a way. So make it quick, but make it engaging. So now the whole training could be so say we have 2 hours. The first hour could be a lot of information, right? And we get through that information. And then the second hour could be, now we're sitting here and we're talking through situations and scenarios. So now we're engaging together based off of the information that we learned to now make sure that you understand what you've learned, so that way you can take it back. So being able to kind of mask those a little bit definitely helps, especially because one thing I've learned, if you want something that people can take back, you got to bring in some type of engagement. Information overload, it doesn't do anything. You have to interact. You have to play out some roles. You have to get your hands dirty, so to speak, in these trainings. Otherwise, I can just, write up, a job aid, or write up, an informational sheet for you to have this, and then take it back with you and read on your own time. So that's when I say, training or using just, I've got to tell you something and then get out of here. That's not really training. That's informationals. And I can write that. Or I could do a video, telling you, step by step what to do, and, in 20 minutes. So we have to make sure that, especially when we call in trainings, that are they really training sometimes? And also, is it even needed? Sometimes, like I said, a job aid, could be used. It could be information in a book or a website. Typically we have SOPs, right, for some of that information as well. and making sure that they read it and then they have to sign off, So now I didn't create a training and have people sitting here for 2 hours when they could be doing something else.
So talk a little bit about the engaging activities, the things you try to do to have them process what they've heard and apply it. Is that something you work on with the SMEs to get kind of context, or what are some of your strategies for developing an exercise that people will relate to?
So I have some core exercises that I have and activities. And yes, what I tend to do is customize them based on the SMEs. So I'll give you an example of one that I recently used. So it was team building. It was a team building exercise training that we had. And so I created the exercise of how do we build as a team and come together and agree or make something happen, so to speak, because you're not going to always agree. But how do we make sure that the task at hand happens, even though there's differences? And so I create simple things, like super, super simple, but they're fun. Example, put everyone in a group. Typically I have the leader in charge of the group, but it could be something as simple as you're going to have to agree on foods that go in a vending machine. Caveat is everyone has to play out a different personality in this group to bring these thoughts together. So one person could be given a slip and they are a person that goes against the grain. I don't care what the idea is. You're not going to like it. I don't care. We deal with people like that, right? Another person could be the quiet person in the back. Don't offer anything. Don't say anything. Don't just there. I'm just sitting back listening. We know there are people that are typically like that, right? Then you have the person that agrees with all the ideas and then wants to add on some spectacular, bells and whistles to the idea, right? No matter what it's a great idea, and they want to add. We all deal with people in that fashion. And so giving everyone in the group a different personality to act out, you should see them. They enjoyed it, having a great time, fun, and you would think they're Grammy nominated actors in here. How they stick to the T and how they're acting out everything, and their goal is to find out what foods. So since we used foods in the vending machine, one person was a health nut, right? So they only want healthy things in there. Then you have a person that's a junk food lover. They want the junk foods, the sugars. So everyone is something different. And so now they have to come together, act it out, and then come up with what's going into that vending machine. And to be honest with you, a lot of times they can't do it, right? It's a hard thing for them to do because we debrief, we talk about some of the pitfalls, what were happening, and how they couldn't come with it. And so now, knowing that everyone had a different personality, knowing, who the people were, in your group, how would you approach it differently, right? One thing that I tell people, and, you have to understand and know your people. You have to. As the leader, that's part of your job. You're there to help your people have the tools they need to be successful. So you need to get to know them.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a great example, and it engages people. It's a safe thing. We could all talk about food, and you set them up to fail basically because they all have different agendas, and gives them some good opportunity to debrief and draw lessons from it. That's a great technique. And so you talked about designing programs, and that you talk with the SMEs, you think about your models, how you're going to fit it in, and I know sometimes you're under the gun. They want the training out yesterday, and so you said earlier that when you first started out, you kind of threw it out there. It was an experiment. You got feedback. You adjusted as you go. Now, are you trying to produce a more finished product? Do you have the time to do that? How do you know when done is done, when you're ready to roll it out?
Over my career, one thing I've realized and learned, it's never done. I don't care what you do, how perfect you try to make it. It's never done. Training is a cycle, right? Which is why we have the T.E.A.M model, which is a cycle. Now, I used to have a lot of hangups. That was part of probably the issue that I would have, is a lot of things would get put on the shelf, right? Because people didn't understand, or, oh, they wanted it to be perfect. And you don't realize, especially early in my career, that what I just said, it's never going to be perfect. But what you want it to do is always be evolving. You always want to get better. And so some of the things that I've, implemented is, you know what? We're having issues, hangups. We don't know if it's ready or not. Let's do a pilot. It's a pilot. And let's let it be known that it's a pilot. So guess what? What's going to happen? We do it as a pilot. Not only that, the people that's in it, they're giving us feedback about the program and telling us if they feel like it's effective or not. And they're also going to tell us where we can improve and get better at, right? So now we have something that we can take back and look at and say, okay, based on the feedback, these are the things that we can, improve on. But another thing that you'll find is the things that's a hang up for you because you're a SMEs in this space, they don't even see it. They don't even notice it. So you're like, oh, but they don't know it. They don't have the eye for it. So they don't even understand where some of the hiccups may have even happened unless you draw attention to it. And so that's a big thing to start to learn as well, too, is that, no, we're trying to improve it. That's why we have evaluations, right? That's why we're asking people, tell us what you got out of it. What do you think? Do you think this can help other people? If so, where would we need to improve? Or what do we need to cut out? What did you say? This was useless. Why did we have to go through this? That's the reason why we had that process. So if you're nervous about it, let's start off with a pilot and do it. So learning how to throw darts up actually helped me in the long run as well, too, because I'm not afraid to throw a dart and see where we come. Like, I'm not, because I don't want us to get hung up on the schematics of trying to make something perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like something. And now we can look at it and say, okay, does that hurt other people? Or was this just a one-off person? Maybe that person didn't even need to be in this training, right?
Yep.
So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and it's an important point for any new trainers who are watching, is that because we have a technology, we have a framework, we have criteria of what we think good training is. When we slip on something, we feel bad about it, but most people don't even notice it and just keep on going with the program and look at the evaluations. And I know there are times I was like, oh, I didn't really present that the best way I could. People were happy. They're happy. So, be a little more confident and go with the flow a little bit and trust your process as a new trainer that you're, and then see what the evals say. Of course, that's the proof of the pudding at the end there.
Exactly.
So you've gone on a long journey. You started out in the Air Force. You ended up working in government. Now you're out in the private sector. Talk a little bit about what's the difference from a training perspective. What has been different challenges, or how do things fall differently in the different contexts?
Yes. So government, definitely is a little tough, because you may be working on a training sometimes, whether it's a training, a program, and they snatch the dollars away, the funding, and move it over somewhere else, right? you know, and that's why I say the government. Military is usually, the funding that you have, the funding is what you have. Government was a little different. Sometimes they may deem something else a little bit more important. So you could be working on a project and it's like, yeah, this $50,000 that you had, yeah, we're taking that away. And so now you got to work with 5,000. You like, what? What am I going to do? Like, what do we, and, so now you have to really, figure it out, from that standpoint. So that was challenging, to literally, and we're talking about, you could be working on projects for 5-6 months and funding gets cut and you're like, what am I going to do here? Like, the money's gone. And so that was definitely, kind of the big challenge there. Private is, I think sometimes they want that perfect. So me having the understanding that nothing is going to be perfect, and now I'm able to articulate it to a way for them to kind of understand that, a whole lot better, definitely helps, because that's what you definitely find, sometimes that companies want you to be perfect. And it's like, there's absolutely no way it's going to be perfect. There's going to be someone that finds something wrong with it. So the more you keep pushing it back, the more, it's going to be just a developed problem. And sometimes also dealing with, when this to, you're in this to make money, right? So now you got to take my money makers, off the floor, off sales, and train them. How long are we taking here? You can't keep them as long as you thought you was going to keep them. So you start to deal with some of those things, time constraints, because, it's leadership, like, oh no, they can't be gone that long. A week, 2 days, 3. Whoa, no, we got, goals, we got deadlines, we got margins to hit. So that's what you start to find, on that side, is the time. They don't want to give them up for the time, even though they signed off on it. But when it comes down to it, they don't want to let their people go for that long. So trying to navigate through that can be tough.
How do you navigate through that? That is a real challenge. That some leaders see training as a cost and not a benefit. And when they're on the floor working, making the sales, that's the benefit. So how do you manage that?
having those meetings ahead of time to really hold them accountable for what they said they would do. So it's kind of a push and pull type thing. Some things you make self-paced, right? So you come up with and make it to where it's self-paced, and it could literally be a 3-hour training, but you give them a week to do it, right? So that way now you can kind of fit it in, but if it's something that they have to do and have to get compliance for, now it's really like, hey, look, you got to let them go, because if they're not compliant, then they can't do anything for you anyway. So, it won't hurt to let them go for this, these 3 days, because if you let this time elapse, then now we're going to have to, they're going to have to be forced to come here before they can do anything else anyway. So it's a push pull, type of relationship, especially when it comes to leadership, because sometimes you have them on board and they're like, yeah, okay, we get it, we understand. And then they're like, we just can't right now. It's always that, we can't right now. We can't afford it, to let, 5 of our people from this department go right now. And like, they're not compliant, then it's going to be a problem. So, and we've already agreed. We set this schedule out. You said this was the downtime, so you try to schedule some of the bigger things around downtime, and things of that nature. But it's always going to be an issue with them.
Yeah. So you learn to dance. You
got to.
You push where you can and step back where you can't, and make it work out. So
exactly.
Well, thanks, Adrian. We're way out of time. This has been great. I really enjoyed the conversation. But that's it for today's episode of Lead, Learn, and Connect. So a huge thank you to Adrian Taylor for sharing his experience and knowledge and some great stories. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave it with a colleague, or leave a review. You can find out more about Adrian, his work, and the books he wrote in the show notes. And if you're ready to strengthen how you teach or coach communication, click the link to our website to learn more about the T.E.A.M model of communication, and follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep leading with intention, keep learning, and keep connecting. Thanks for listening.